Welcome to Mr. Crime Sleep, the place where your darkest fears come to life. Tonight, we've got 3 terrifyingly true stories that will keep you up all night, gripping your sheets in fear. These aren't just any horror stories, they're the kind that crawl into your mind and never leave. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a spine-chilling tale. And don't forget to comment below with your thoughts on tonight's stories. Have you ever experienced something unexplainable? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing your chilling encounters. Now get comfortable, but remember, the more you listen, the closer you might get to the darkness lurking just outside your door. Are you ready? Let's begin. Story 1: The Game of Hide and Seek. The air in the house felt heavy, the silence pressing down like an invisible weight. I could feel the coolness of the wood floor beneath my feet, the warmth of the basement air lingering from the game we had been playing earlier. The house creaked and groaned as if it was alive, and the sudden echoes of my footsteps felt disorienting. With each movement, I half expected something or someone to emerge from the shadows, but as I passed the hallway, I forced myself to think it was all in my head. The house had always been quiet, but tonight the silence seemed to carry an edge, something sharp and jagged. I opened the door to the guest room with a slight creak. The room was dark, but my eyes were quick to adjust to the dim light. The bed, the dresser, the desk, all exactly as they had been before. I checked under the bed, empty. I quickly moved to the closet, flinging open the door. Nothing but clothes and boxes stacked high. I turned around, reassessing the room, but something felt wrong. The atmosphere felt off, like I had stepped into an entirely different space. The stillness of it was suffocating. I left the room with a quick glance back, my thoughts still racing. Maybe I had been too jumpy. Chris was hiding somewhere in the house and I had been caught up in the thrill of the game. But as I descended the stairs and checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the basement, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was as if someone was quietly following my every move, unseen but present, watching, waiting. My heart began to race and I quickened my pace, but no matter how fast I moved, I couldn't shake the sense that something sinister was lurking in the corners of my mind. When I finally found Chris in the basement, he was curled behind a stack of old boxes, laughing at how long it had taken me to find him. His laugh was innocent, like it was just another game. But I felt the cold grip of fear tighten in my chest. I couldn't explain it, but the fear felt real. It wasn't just my imagination running wild. We switched roles, and this time it was Chris's turn to count. I ran upstairs and hid under the guest room bed, trying to keep my breathing slow, my heart thumping loudly in my chest. I could hear Chris moving around downstairs, his footsteps echoing faintly through the house. The moments felt endless, my nerves on edge as I waited for him to find me. As the minutes passed, the house grew unnervingly quiet. I strained my ears to hear any sign of Chris, but all I could hear was my own shallow breathing and the soft creak of the house settling. Then I heard the footsteps, slow, deliberate, closer. I held my breath, trying to stay as still as possible. The footsteps stopped just outside the door to the guest room, and I could feel my pulse in my throat. I closed my eyes and squeezed my body as tightly as possible, hoping to remain undetected. The silence stretched on. I thought he was just waiting me out, perhaps giving me a little scare before jumping out and shouting. But the silence grew too long, too unnerving. The house felt cold suddenly, the air heavy and dense. I shifted slightly and I thought I heard a faint whispering. A voice, soft, hushed, but unmistakable. I held my breath, unsure if I had heard it or if my mind was playing tricks on me. The voice seemed to grow louder, the sound more distinct. "Is someone in here?" I whispered to myself, my heart thudding in my chest. but I didn't hear an answer. Instead, the footsteps started again, moving slowly, deliberately, down the hall. I waited in the dark, shivering beneath the bed. Every instinct told me to get out, to run, but I remained frozen, listening as the footsteps crept down the hallway, past my room, toward the stairs. I finally crawled out from my hiding place, thinking the game was over. The house was too quiet, too still. I called out to Chris, my voice trembling, but there was no response. I walked down the stairs cautiously, each step an effort to steady my nerves. When I reached the kitchen, I called out again, but still nothing. I heard a voice from downstairs. It was faint at first, but the words were unmistakable. "I'm still looking for you." The voice was clear, but strangely distant. Confused, I hurried downstairs and opened the basement door. "Chris!" I shouted into the dark. "Where are you?" His voice echoed back, but it wasn't the usual playful response I had come to expect from him. "Where are you hiding?" he called out. "I'll find you soon." I turned cold with realization. I was certain that I was not hiding anywhere near the basement. I had been upstairs the entire time. I called back, but the voice at the other end of the basement only replied with a laugh, a chilling, unsettling laugh. I ran, heart pounding in my chest, back toward the kitchen. I didn't stop to check the rest of the house. My hands were shaking as I dialed Chris's number, the phone vibrating in my hand. The silence in the house was unbearable now, too quiet, too still. But then a thud, a heavy, hollow thud, came from above. The footsteps returned, and this time they were closer, right above me. "Chris!" I called out again, my voice breaking. I moved toward the stairs, heart racing as I climbed them. The steps groaned beneath my weight, each creak sounding like it echoed through the entire house. When I reached the top, I froze. The guest room door was now shut tight, and from behind it I could hear breathing, slow, heavy, labored. I opened the door quickly, the poker clenched tightly in my hand. The room was dark, empty. But as I turned toward the closet, I heard a dragging sound, a noise like fabric dragging on the floor. I opened the closet door, the air thick with tension. Empty. But something was off. There was no one else in the house. Yet the noises persisted. The footsteps, the whispers, the strange creaks and groans. I couldn't explain it, but something had changed in the house. Something had entered that wasn't supposed to be there. And for the first time in my life, I felt a terror that I could not shake. The unsettling encounter. I grew up in a small town on the outskirts of a dense forest. The trees, old and towering, cast shadows over the land, creating a dark and mysterious atmosphere that always made me feel uneasy. The town was quiet, nestled far from the noise of city life. As a kid, I would run wild through the woods with my friends. We would climb trees, chase each other, and play games like hide and seek, unaware of the dark history hidden within the forest depths. It was the summer of my 15th year when I first felt the true weight of the forest presence. The air was thick with humidity, the heat nearly unbearable, as I met up with my friends, Chris, Tyler, and Matt. We were planning on playing a game of hide and seek in the woods behind my house. The perfect setting for a game, full of thick underbrush and towering trees, the kind of place where the shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should. We had played this game countless times before, but this night, something felt different. Something in the air had shifted. Chris suggested we play around the woods as usual, but something about the darkness in the trees made my stomach churn. The last time we had ventured deep into the woods, something had felt off. There had been a strange, unsettling quietness that didn't seem right, but I shrugged it off. After all, it was just a game, right? We gathered in the yard, deciding to make the woods the playground for the night. The air had that thick, still quality that you can only get in the dead of night. The only sounds that filled the air were the chirping of crickets and the occasional rustling of leaves from a distant breeze. Tyler volunteered to be the seeker, and the rest of us ran off into the woods. I took off toward the tall trees, moving with purpose as I searched for a good hiding spot. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled my nose. I ducked low beneath a cluster of thick bushes and crouched down, trying to be as still as possible. I could hear the other kids running, their voices fading into the distance. Minutes passed, and I found myself sinking deeper into the silence of the woods. The only sound now was the faint rustle of leaves as the wind stirred the branches overhead. My heart was thumping in my chest, but not from excitement. There was something else, something primal gnawing at me, a sense of being watched. I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was in those woods, hidden among the trees, observing us. A chill ran down my spine as the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I turned my head, half expecting to see someone standing there, just beyond the shadows. But there was nothing. I slowly exhaled, trying to calm myself. It was nothing. Just the mind playing tricks in the dark. Time seemed to stretch, and I waited, still crouched behind the bushes, listening intently for the sound of footsteps. I couldn't help but feel like I was being stalked, as if someone or something was moving in the woods with me. The silence in the woods grew deeper, heavier, and I felt myself growing more anxious with each passing second. Suddenly I heard it, a soft, slow crunch of leaves. Someone was walking nearby. I held my breath, wondering if it was Tyler, but as the footsteps came closer, something didn't feel right. The pace was erratic, almost as if the person was unsure of where they were going, or perhaps hiding their own presence. My heart began to race as I crouched lower, praying that whoever it was wouldn't find me. The footsteps stopped right behind me. I froze. The air around me felt impossibly still, and I didn't dare move an inch. I wanted to call out, but I didn't dare make a sound. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold, a low, guttural breathing. It was heavy and labored, almost as if it were coming from deep within the woods. My mind raced as I struggled to make sense of what I was hearing. It wasn't Tyler. It wasn't any of my friends. No, this was something else, something I had never encountered in all my years of playing in these woods. I slowly began to back away, inching toward the cover of a nearby tree. But just as I began to move, I heard the unmistakable sound of twigs snapping underfoot. Someone, or something, was coming closer. I could feel the cold sweat forming on my skin. Then, without warning, the footsteps stopped. The air was thick with tension as I held my breath, waiting. The stillness was maddening. The woods had gone completely silent. The sounds of the forest had stopped, replaced with an eerie quiet. I dared not move, afraid that even the smallest motion would give me away. I waited there for what felt like an eternity, but the figure never moved. There was no sound, no rustling. I could only feel the presence lurking in the shadows. Then something even stranger happened. I could hear whispers, quiet, disjointed voices that seemed to come from all around me. They were speaking too softly to understand, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a language I didn't recognize, an unnatural, chilling murmur that sent a shockwave of fear down my spine. I didn't wait to hear more. I bolted from my hiding place, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear the footsteps behind me getting closer. The whispers grew louder. Panic overtook me as I ran, pushing my legs to move faster. The trees seemed to close in around me as I sprinted through the darkened woods, the distant sounds of the whispers following me like an unseen predator. When I finally emerged from the woods, gasping for air, my heart still racing, I looked back, but there was nothing, no sign of anyone. The eerie silence of the woods had returned, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. I ran straight back to the house, not stopping until I was safely inside. I locked all the doors, the hairs on the back of my neck still standing. My friends had already returned, laughing and joking, unaware of the terror I had just experienced. But I could still hear those whispers in my mind, still feel the presence that had followed me through the trees. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made my heart race. Every gust of wind outside sounded like footsteps. But most of all, I could still hear the whispers, the haunting murmurs that had followed me out of the woods. I knew I wasn't the only one who had heard them, and I knew I would never play hide and seek in those woods again. Story 2: The Secrets of the Forest. I spent the next few days trying to shake off the feeling of dread that had taken hold of me. The woods had always been a place of mystery, but now it felt different, more dangerous, more alive. I couldn't shake the idea that something was hiding in those trees, something that didn't belong. But the worst part was that I wasn't sure what I had heard or seen. I had never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural, but after that night, I wasn't so sure. The whispers kept coming back to me, lingering in my thoughts, even when I wasn't thinking about them. It was like they had left a mark on my mind, an imprint that wouldn't fade. I wanted to forget, but every time I closed my eyes, I could still see the darkness of the woods and hear the rustling of leaves. That weekend, my friends and I decided to head back to the woods. We figured the best way to move on was to confront our fear. We'd bring flashlights, stay in a group, and make sure nothing creepy happened this time. But as we entered the woods, it was clear something was wrong. The atmosphere was different. The trees seemed to loom higher than usual, their branches swaying in ways that didn't feel natural. It felt as though the woods themselves were watching us, waiting for us to make a mistake. We stuck together, making our way deeper into the woods. The ground beneath us was soft, wet from recent rain, and the air had a musty, damp smell. As we ventured further in, I felt the fear begin to creep back. But this time, I wasn't alone. We were all on edge, each of us stealing glances at the shadows between the trees. That's when we heard it, the same whispering I had heard before. It came from somewhere deep in the woods, too far for us to see who was making the sound. The voices seemed to come from all around us, like they were swirling in the wind. We all froze, our flashlights shaking in our hands. I could feel the blood drain from my face as the whispering grew louder. And then the footsteps began again, slow, deliberate, moving toward us. Story 2: The Unseen Figure in the Woods, the Unseen Presence. We froze at the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, just beyond the reach of our flashlight beams. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. The whispers grew louder, but they didn't make any sense. The voices were disjointed, frantic, almost like a chant, echoing in the space between the trees. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. We had all heard the same thing, but no one dared to speak. We just stood there, rooted to the spot, not knowing what to do. The footsteps continued, coming closer with each passing second. Whoever, or whatever, was moving in the woods had no intention of letting us off easy. "Maybe it's just an animal," Tyler whispered, but the uncertainty in his voice told me he didn't believe it either. "A deer or something?" But the steps didn't sound like an animal. They were too deliberate, too controlled, as if something was walking with purpose, methodically making its way toward us. It was almost like the forest itself was alive and it was coming for us. I tried to move, to speak, to do something, but the fear kept me frozen. The whispers seemed to fill the air around us, swirling in a way that made it feel like the trees themselves were talking, taunting us. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. And then, without warning, the figure appeared. It was just a shadow at first, blending into the darkness between the trees. But then it stepped forward, emerging from the thick foliage. At first, I thought it was one of my friends playing a prank, but as it stepped into the beam of my flashlight, I saw that it was something far worse. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and its features were obscured by the darkness. It wore a long, tattered cloak that hung loosely around its frame, billowing in the wind like it had a life of its own. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, and the only thing I could make out were two glowing red eyes that glimmered with a malevolent energy. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed, unable to move as the figure stepped closer, its steps slow and measured. Every step it took sent a ripple of fear through me, the sensation crawling up my spine and sinking deep into my bones. We all stood there, too terrified to make a sound, as the figure continued toward us. The forest had gone silent, except for the sound of its slow, deliberate footsteps. It was as if the world around us had disappeared, leaving only this creature, this force that seemed to haunt the woods. Who are you? I finally managed to croak, my voice barely a whisper, almost drowned out by the thunder of my heartbeat. The figure didn't answer, but its eyes, those red eyes, seemed to flicker, as if it understood what I had said. It didn't speak, but I could feel its presence closing in on us like it was waiting for something, or someone. We stood frozen, caught between fear and confusion as the figure stepped even closer, its presence growing heavier with every passing second. The air around us seemed to thicken, the atmosphere choking us, making it hard to breathe. I looked at my friends, but they were just as paralyzed as I was. No one dared to move, to speak, or even breathe. We were caught in this terrible moment, this horrible dream that felt all too real. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure turned and vanished back into the trees. No sound, no movement. It was as though the woods swallowed it whole, the shadows closing in around it like a veil. We stood there, in stunned silence for what felt like hours, too scared to move, too terrified to process what had just happened. The only thing that remained was the pounding of our hearts and the cold sweat that clung to our skin. Finally, Tyler broke the silence, his voice shaky. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. We all nodded, too scared to say anything. We didn't need to say anything. We all knew what we had seen, what we had felt. Story 3. The Mystery of the Midnight Caller. 1. The Strange Phone Call. It was one of those nights where the world felt heavy, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The air was thick with the kind of oppressive quiet that comes right before a storm. It was a Friday, and I was 16 at the time, living in a small suburban town. My parents were away on a weekend trip, leaving me home alone for the first time in ages. The house was silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft creaking of the wooden floors. I had just settled in for the evening, making myself a snack and sitting down to watch a movie. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second stretching into an eternity. The warmth of the house was a comfort, and the house seemed safe, as it always had. I was just about to lose myself in the plot of a movie when the phone rang. The sound sliced through the stillness of the house, making me jump in surprise. It was strange for anyone to be calling at this hour, especially since my parents were the only ones who usually called, and they weren't due back until Sunday evening. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the receiver. It was too late for a wrong number, and I didn't recognize the area code. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up the phone, pressing it to my ear. "Hello?" I said, trying to sound casual. There was a long pause before a voice answered, low and raspy, like it had been dragged across gravel. "Do you hear it?" I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as the words sunk in. My pulse quickened, and a chill ran down my spine. The voice was strange, distant, but somehow familiar. It was as though the person on the other end was waiting for a response, waiting to see if I would answer their question. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though my voice betrayed me. There was no response, just the sound of shallow breathing, like someone was on the other end of the line, standing there, waiting. I could feel my throat tighten with unease. My heart began to pound as I glanced nervously around the room, the silence around me now feeling suffocating. "Do you hear it?" the voice repeated, this time louder, more insistent. The words felt like they were echoing, reverberating in my skull. "Who is this?" I demanded again, my voice shaking. But once again, there was no answer. Just the strange breathing growing louder, closer. And then, as suddenly as it started, the phone clicked and the line went dead. I stood there, frozen for a moment, staring at the receiver in my hand. I didn't know what to make of it. The hairs on my arms were standing on end, and a sick feeling settled in my stomach. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just a prank or some wrong number. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. There was something unsettling about that voice, something I couldn't place. I hung up the phone, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that had crept into my chest. I paced around the room, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Just a weird, random call. But I couldn't get the sound of the breathing out of my mind. It felt like it was still there, lingering in the silence of the room. I decided to get some fresh air, to clear my head. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, hoping the cool night air would help me calm down. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard. The streets were empty, as they always were at this time of night. It was peaceful. Almost too peaceful. As I stood there, I noticed something strange in the distance. At the end of the street, there was a figure standing in the shadows. It was too far away to make out any details, but it was there, unmoving. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at it. The figure didn't seem to move, didn't seem to acknowledge the passing cars or the occasional streetlight flickering on. I squinted, trying to get a better look. But the figure was still there, like a shadow, standing in the darkness, watching me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my trance. I pulled it out quickly, but the screen was blank. No new messages, no missed calls, just the time and the eerie silence of the night. I looked up again, and the figure was gone. It hadn't moved, but it had disappeared as if it had never been there at all. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The phone call, the figure in the distance, everything felt wrong. I went back inside and locked the door behind me. I sat on the couch, my mind racing with questions, but no answers. The phone call, the voice, was it related to the figure I saw outside? Was someone watching me? I couldn't stop the wave of paranoia that had settled over me. The rest of the night passed slowly. I tried to distract myself with TV, but nothing held my attention. Every creak of the house seemed louder, every shadow seemed darker. I kept checking the door, the windows, half expecting to see someone standing just outside, waiting for me to notice. But no one ever appeared. I finally decided to try to sleep, though it wasn't easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow, felt the strange presence of something or someone lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. Part 2. The Return of the Unseen Caller. The next morning, I woke up late, exhausted from a restless night. I barely had time for breakfast before I heard a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat as I walked to answer it. I had been hoping for a normal day, but part of me was still on edge, haunted by the events of the night before. When I opened the door, I was surprised to find my neighbor standing there, looking worried. "Hey, have you been getting strange calls?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been getting these weird phone calls," she said. "Just like breathing on the other end, like someone's there but won't say anything. It's been happening for the last few days and it's starting to freak me out." My blood ran cold. It was the same voice, the same unsettling breathing. I had to know more. "I got a call like that last night," I told her, feeling my heart race. "But I thought it was just a prank." She shook her head. "No, it's not just a prank. I've been hearing it every night. And I think it's getting closer." I asked her if she'd heard anything else, but she just shook her head, clearly scared. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Whoever was making these calls wasn't just playing games. They were stalking us, watching us. Later that afternoon, I decided to do something about it. I couldn't just sit back and wait for whatever was happening to happen. I called the police and reported the strange calls, but they didn't seem to take me seriously. They said it could just be a prank or a glitch with the phone lines. I didn't believe that, though. It felt too real, too purposeful. That evening, I tried to focus on something, anything, to distract me from the growing anxiety. But as the night wore on, the fear returned. I found myself jumping at every sound, every creak in the house. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. At around midnight, I heard the phone ring again. This time, my heart was in my throat as I picked it up. I expected the same eerie voice, the same low breathing, but instead there was silence. I held the phone to my ear, waiting, my breath shallow, and then a voice whispered, just barely audible, "It's not over." The line went dead, and I dropped the phone, my hand trembling. I knew then that this wasn't a random occurrence. Whoever was calling knew something. They knew I was paying attention. They knew I wasn't going to let this go. And that was when I realized the figure in the woods wasn't just some random stranger. It wasn't a coincidence. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been watching all of us. The mystery caller, the strange presence outside. This was only the beginning. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't relax. I started noticing strange things around my house. Small things like the way the windows were sometimes ajar when I knew I had closed them, or the way the lights would flicker in the middle of the night. Every sound, every creak in the house made my heart race, and I couldn't stop feeling like I was being watched. The mystery caller kept coming back every night at the same time, always with the same chilling breath and the same whispered words. "It's not over." And every time, it felt like the walls were closing in around me. Something was happening, something I couldn't explain, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't alone, I wasn't safe. Story 3. The Mystery of the Midnight Caller. Part 2. The Haunting Intensifies. It had been a week since the last strange phone call, and I had not been able to shake the feeling of being watched. The house felt different now, darker, heavier. I couldn't escape the sense that something or someone was lurking just out of sight. The feeling of dread that had first settled in my chest after the call had only grown, and now it clung to me like a shadow. That night, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't wait for the police to do something. I had to find out who was behind these calls, who was stalking me, and who had been leaving me these cryptic messages. Something told me that I wasn't just dealing with a prank anymore. This felt far too real, far too menacing. After another sleepless night, I couldn't ignore the terror that had built up inside me. I decided I was going to stay up late and wait for the phone to ring again. I wasn't sure what I expected, perhaps to catch the person on the other end of the line, or maybe I just wanted to feel like I had control over something in my life that was spiraling out of control. The house was unnervingly quiet that night. I sat in the living room, watching the clock tick down the minutes. It was almost midnight, the same time as the last few calls. The house was dim, just a single lamp glowing on the side table. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the soft tapping of my fingers against the couch. Then, without warning, the phone rang. My heart skipped a beat and I almost hesitated. But I had come this far. I wasn't backing down now. I grabbed the phone and with a shaking hand I pressed it to my ear. The line was eerily quiet at first. I waited, my breath shallow, my pulse quickening. "Hello?" I whispered, trying to steady my voice. For a long moment there was nothing but silence on the other end. No breathing, no strange whispers, just the soft buzz of the line. I felt my throat tighten. Had I imagined it? Was this just another glitch, another misdial? But then, just as I was about to hang up, the same voice from before returned, low, rasping, as if the person on the other end was standing right next to me. "You shouldn't have waited," the voice whispered. "It's too late now." The words sent a chill down my spine. The voice was different this time, more distorted, more sinister. I couldn't place the tone, but it was filled with a dark, almost predatory intent. The line clicked again, and I was left holding the phone in my hand, my heart pounding. The sense of fear was suffocating now. I had no idea who was on the other end, but it was clear that this wasn't just some random prank. I was being targeted, but why? I sat there, frozen, my mind racing with questions. Had the caller been in my house? Had they been watching me the entire time? I glanced nervously around the living room, feeling as though the walls were closing in. I wasn't alone. I could feel it in my bones. Someone, or something, was watching. Part 2. The Unseen Presence. The following days felt like they lasted forever. I couldn't focus on anything. The eerie calls persisted every night, always at the same time, always with that same breathless whisper, "It's too late now." My nerves were frayed. I was too scared to sleep, too scared to leave the house. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence. Every creak of the floorboards felt like someone was moving in the shadows. I couldn't escape it. One night, as the clock struck midnight again, I heard a knock at the door. The sound was so unexpected, so sudden, that I jumped out of my seat. My heart raced in my chest as I looked toward the door, wondering who could possibly be visiting at this hour. I slowly walked to the door, my breath shallow. The house felt colder now, as though the temperature had dropped several degrees in an instant. I stood there for a moment, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Should I open it? Should I call for help? I was paralyzed by the fear that had taken over my mind. My fingers trembled as I slowly turned the knob and opened the door. There was no one there. Just the empty street and the faint glow of the streetlights casting long shadows along the ground. I looked both ways down the street, but no one was in sight. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. It was like someone had been there, standing just outside the door, but had slipped away before I could see them. I shut the door quickly and locked it, my mind spinning with unanswered questions. The phone rang again, and this time I didn't wait. I grabbed it, pressing it to my ear before the first ring had even finished. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the phone, my voice breaking under the weight of the fear and frustration that had been building inside me for days. The voice on the other end was soft at first, almost soothing. "You shouldn't have opened the door," it whispered. I froze. The voice was coming from inside my own house. The breath caught in my throat as the sound of slow footsteps echoed behind me. I turned, my heart hammering in my chest, but the room was empty. There was no one there, nothing but the faint hum of the fridge and the stillness of the night. I could hear my pulse in my ears, the thudding rhythm louder than anything else in the room. The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate, as if they were coming closer. I turned around again, my eyes darting from corner to corner, searching for any sign of movement, but I saw nothing. No shadows, no figures, just the stark emptiness of the room. Then, as if on cue, I heard the sound of a door creaking open, soft and slow, like something was moving through the house, inch by inch. I looked towards the hallway where my bedroom door was slightly ajar. It was the only room upstairs with a light still on. With a burst of adrenaline, I ran toward the stairs, my legs heavy and stiff with fear. I reached the top of the stairs and froze. The door to my bedroom was wide open, but there was no one inside, just the soft flicker of the light. But then I heard it again, footsteps, this time on the stairs. I whipped around and ran back down, heart racing, stomach in knots. I didn't know what was happening, but it was real. I wasn't imagining it. Whatever was in the house with me, whatever was behind those calls, was real, and it was getting closer. I turned on the light, but the bulb flickered and buzzed, casting long, jagged shadows on the walls. I stepped forward, my breath shallow, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the silence. That's when I saw it. A figure in the corner of the basement, standing completely still. My heart stopped. The figure was tall, almost unnaturally tall, its face hidden in shadow. Its posture was rigid, as if it were waiting for me to make a move. And in that moment I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I turned and ran, not looking back, not even once. My breathing grew erratic. I couldn't explain it, but the sense of dread that had plagued me for days had reached its peak. I wasn't alone, and whoever or whatever was in the house with me wasn't just some random intruder. There was something more sinister at play. I ran to the windows, desperate to find an escape. But as I glanced outside, I saw nothing but the dark, empty street. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, and no matter where I turned, there was no way out. That's when I heard it. The soft, muffled sound of breathing coming from behind me. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. My feet were rooted to the floor, unable to move. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, louder than anything else. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the faint sound of that breathing, closer now than before. In a split second, the figure moved. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away. My feet carried me down the street through the dark, empty night. I didn't stop until I reached Chris's house, where I collapsed on the front steps, gasping for air. The investigation. What was going on? The next few days passed in a blur. I tried to make sense of what had happened, but nothing about it felt real. It was as though I had crossed over into some alternate reality where logic and reason didn't exist. I didn't tell anyone at first. How could I? No one would believe me. The fear, the terror, the feeling of being watched. It was too much to explain. But the fear didn't stop. Every night, the phone calls continued, the same distorted voice, the same chilling whispers. And every time, the message was the same. It's too late now. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living like this, trapped in my own home, too afraid to even close my eyes. I decided to call the police. I needed answers. They had to be able to help me. When the officers arrived, they took my statement seriously, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. They'd been through cases like this before, crazy people making strange calls, people with too much time on their hands. But I wasn't crazy. I knew what I had experienced. The figure, the whispers, the footsteps. They were real. I showed them the phone records, the notes I had found, the messages on my voicemail. They took everything down and promised they would investigate. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. This wasn't a simple case. There was something darker at work here, something that went beyond any explanation. The next night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, too still. My eyes darted around the room, expecting the worst. And that's when I heard it. A knock at the door. I froze, my blood running cold. Who could it be at this hour? I crept toward the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. I opened it slowly, just a crack, peering out into the darkness. There was no one there. Just an envelope left on the doorstep. I bent down, my heart racing, and picked it up. Inside, I found a single sheet of paper with a message written in dark, jagged letters. I told you it was too late. My stomach twisted. It wasn't over. Whatever this was, it wasn't over.